Are you ready to start thinking big? I mean real big. I mean like massively big. I even mean gargantuanly big. I even mean chicken soup for the soul kind of big. Well, wait till you see who we have on this show today.
Welcome to the Motivation Show podcast, where we interview remarkable world-class experts that help bring out the greatness within you. Top book authors, super successful business people, and outstanding special guests that will motivate and inspire you with their incredible, uplifting stories and life-changing tips and strategies. Our goal is your success. If you desire more out of life, you've dialed into the right show. So fasten your seatbelts, friends, and let's get ready for some high-octane motivation. Now, your host, the mayor of motivation, Eli Marcus.
If you are into motivation and self-help, then our guests on today's motivation show need no introduction. But let's blow you away with their intros anyway. We have the co-author of a book series that has sold over 500 million books. You heard that right, 500 million. Time magazine called it the publishing phenomenon of the decade, the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series. In the area of human potential, no one is more renowned than the titan of inspiration and motivation. If you want to know what's possible in your life, then listen very closely to one of the most dynamic and compelling speakers of our time, as he has shaped people's lives with his powerful message of possibility, opportunity, and action for more than 44 years. We also have one of the leading success and wellness coaches in the country. This dynamic lady is an entrepreneur, certified life coach, and wellness nutrition expert with clients worldwide that have experienced remarkable success in their relationships, career transitions, and health and wellness. She is the author of Skinny Life, The Secret to Being Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit. Both of these game changers have co-authored a new book, which I can't put down, and I have not gotten through it yet, but I am pumped. It's called Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. You guys are going to be blown away today hearing from these two. Welcome to the Motivation Show, Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen.
Thank you, Eli. Wow, what a great introduction. We appreciate it.
And you and I have known each other for decades, so that's really nice. Thank you, Eli.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back actually about 23 years ago, and I'm going to tell a quick story of us meeting. You had done a seminar for me. You were kind enough to fly in and do a seminar for my company called the Seminar Center. And you had asked me for breakfast the next morning. Now, this story is even going to blow you away because I doubt if you'll remember the great question you asked me 23 years ago. We were sitting for breakfast in the Drake Swiss Hotel in New York City on 56th and Park, which no longer even exists, by the way. That's how long ago that conversation was. You asked me a question that only years later I really comprehended in its largesse. You know what you asked me, Mark?
No, sir. What did I ask you? Please.
You said to me, can you fill up the Meadowlands for an event if I were to hold an event? Now, I was a pretty humble kind of guy who, to be perfectly frank, probably struggled to put 100 people in a room. You know, that was kind of the beginning days of my motivational world. It took me years later to really comprehend what that question was all about. Why? Because Mark Victor Hansen had the audacity to actually say, I want to sell 1 billion books. Who would ever think of selling 1 billion books when the average amount of books sold by anybody is 5,000? And here you are, over 500 million books. So it took me a long time to realize who I was speaking to and the power of the ask, which is what your new book is all about. So
we'll let you still fill the Meadowlands.
One day I might actually take you up on that. Because, you know, I've learned that if you set the bar here, you know, at a certain level, you're going to get to probably that bar at best. If you set it higher, you're going to probably get to that bar. And if you set it even higher, you're probably at least stand the chance to get to that bar. So you're only as good as what you can possibly conceive and believe.
That's
And
right.
I think, right,
the
Mark?
size of your question determines the size of your result. So you might as well ask bigger questions because they don't cost any more. But boy, do they give a bigger, better, stronger, healthier, more opportunistic result that not only benefits you, but benefits all of those that you're going to get to serve.
Exactly. So what inspired you both to write this remarkable book?
Well, Mark and I are so blessed to travel around all over the world. We meet so many amazing people. What we started to notice, Eli, is that those who are like super successful in many areas of their lives and those who are not so different. Okay. They're all smart, talented, probably more over-endowed with talent. They wouldn't use their talent in 4 lifetimes. But the big difference is one thing, the ability to ask. And as we started developing our ideas around asking, we realized, Mark and I both realized that throughout our lives, anytime we were down, anytime that things had gone bad, what got us out of our situation was the ability to ask the right questions and then to answer those questions honestly. And so as we started to explore this further, we ended up interviewing 26 what we call master askers for the book. And the same held true for their lives. You know, they were able to get through all of the bumps, the pitfalls and everything by asking the right questions and then moving forward from those answers. So we had a lot of fun bringing this together, and we discovered that there are 3 channels through which to ask, and those 3 channels are equally important. They're ask yourself, ask others, and ask God.
And boy, you can't leave one of those out, can you?
No.
I know.
Yeah,
Sure.
especially not the last one. You really would be in trouble, right?
Right, exactly. No, that's the one that kind of makes everything all right.
That's
So-
weird, but sorry, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
So back in 1974, when I went bankrupt in New York, I went bankrupt so fast, I asked the wrong question. Because you can ask right questions, it'll take you to what we're saying is the subtitle of the book is The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. We're saying everybody that's alive has a destiny, and they need to get in the energy orbit of somebody that is a little bit further along than they are and then get in trained to them, get a mentor, mentee. But back then, I went bankrupt. I built the Wall Street Racket Club, botanical gardens, aviaries. But as you know, in 1974, we had double-digit inflation. The oil embargo hit. The Arabs said, we can write checks so big, your banks will bounce. Well, they did for me. I checked the book library, How to Go Bankrupt by Yourself. It was tragic. It was terrible. I was hiding under the cover, sleeping in front of another guy's, in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room for 6 months. And all of a sudden I said, well, back to question number 1, what do I want? And what I wanted was I wanted to talk to people that care about things that matter, that would make a life-changing difference. And I started speaking, learned how to do it. Then everyone said, boy, that story, you ought to have it in a book. So my first book was Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. I sold 20,000 copies in front of a platform, a little bitty audiences to life insurance. I did 1,000 talks a year, first 3 years. And I went from 75 grand a year as a beginning speaker to making 20,000 times $10. I made 200,000, tripled my income. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, especially in New York back in 1974. You will agree that was big chump change. I was loaded comparatively.
Wow, that's a great story. I can't help but ask that question about how many times you were actually rejected for Chicken Soup for the Soul, and how you ended up, just forging on and believing that you could, theoretically even conceive of selling 1 billion books.
Right. That's one of the reasons they probably rejected it, because I wrote a while of a business plan. But what they didn't understand behind that was that I was asking all the best fiction and nonfiction authors, not how to write. I know how to write since I was 16 or a little earlier. And my wife is a phenomenal writer. But back then I said, how did you market and sell so many books? So as far as I know, again, I don't know everybody's story personally, but nobody else ever codified it, wrote it down, wrote a wild business plan, said, this is what Scott Peck did. This is what James Michener did. This is what Wayne Dyer did. And I'm going to do that and more, because you got to do everything you promise and a little bit more to make sure. You got to go the extra mile is the theory.
Yeah. So I want to further discuss why so few of us ask for all the things that we want and need. And yet when we were kids, we asked for everything and anything. And you were so relentless. We just kept asking until we got it, right? And then life happened, right? And we stopped asking. So you write about your grandson, Everett, in your book. Can you tell us what Everett asked for and the significance of that?
Okay, so Crystal and I are on vacation in Hawaii, And Everett, who we absolutely love and adore, we had him at a sleepover this last weekend with the other, we got 6 grandkids and 5 kids in our blended family, but he got a little, what's called, you and I would call it a Dick Tracy watch. Today it's called a gizmo watch, but it really does exist.
Yes.
And it's only got 4 people he can call. He can call his parents and he can call his grandparents, right? So Everett, all of a sudden this call comes into my cell phone and it's from Everett, and I go, holy cow, we're on vacation. I said, honey, Everett's calling. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm hiding in the closet. I said, you're hiding in the closet? Why is that? He says, because I'm talking to you, Grampy, and it's really important. I said, okay, it's really important. Anything you ever tell me is important, and it's between us. What is it, son? I was thinking something had gone wrong. He said, you know those books you write? I said, which ones? He said, the chicken soup books? I said, yes, sir. He said, are you still writing books? I said, more than ever. He said, Grampy, with you, and we call her Mimi, can you and Mimi let me write a book with you? And she's sitting right there listening to this on speaker, and I go, she nods her head, and I go, yeah, you can write a book. And that's why we put this story in, because kids have, if they got loving parents and grandparents, they're unstoppable askers, and they need to be, because it's the way you build your self-esteem, your self-image, your self-love, your validation in universe.
Right. And when we're children, you know, like you were saying, Eli, we come into this world asking who, what, when, where, we're so curious. We're endlessly curious. And we also want more. We ask for more, more, more. And we're not ashamed. And then something happens, you know, in life. We get beat up, we get rejected, we get put down, go to school, you're told to be quiet, stop asking, or, you know, teachers, then you go to your job and your boss is the authority, or the military. And pretty soon just life kind of crushes us and crushes that ability, that natural ability to ask, and also our natural curiosity, which stops us from pursuing the things we want. And we talk about that in the book. We talk about the 7 roadblocks to asking. And what we've discovered is every one of us carries at least one or more of these roadblocks to asking.
Well, I carry a few of them, I think, and I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you my story just from yesterday. So I've probably been rejected more than almost any human being on the planet, because when I first started in my career, I started on 40th Street and 5th Avenue. I went up to the top of a building, just knocked on everybody's door, and boy, did I get rejected. Boy, did I not know any better. So I went to the School of Hard Knocks. So you would think that, you know, I'm so used to getting rejected that I can ask for anything. So last night, I'm walking around and I see a Channel 5 news car, right? And so I had this thought that maybe I should just go over them and talk to them. You know, maybe they might want a little more motivational sort of story than all the bad news that's been banding around. So I walked past them and I didn't get the courage enough to speak to them. So I said, you know, I'm going to take a second pass by them. And this time I'm going to ask them. Lo and behold, I went by them. I still didn't ask them, right? Then I go back to your book, Ask, and I start reading it and reading it and reading it and reading it. And I vowed, you know something, last night, that's the last time that's ever going to happen. From now on, I'm asking.
We give you full permission to boldly ask where nobody has asked before. Because what if they did a story? What we're saying now with Ask is it, and we've just been asked to talk to even like 85,000 of the biggest pastors in America. And I said, look, I'm a scholar in a lot of people, but Dr. Napoleon Hill is one of many. And Hill wrote all the fireside chats for FDR. I don't know if you know that or not. Mm-hmm. He wrote lines like, you have nothing to fear but fear itself, confront your fears and make it disappear.
Classic.
Yeah, lovely, lovely lines. And what happened is that when he was called Knapp, and he got paid $1 a year to help in the White House because he was already mega rich. So FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, said, well, what are we going to do? And he said, we're going to bring in every pastor and we're going to tell them, you guys are no longer allowed to do negative stories about the Depression. This is 1937. I've written this book, Think and Grow Rich. We'll give you a free copy of it, but you've got to turn the story around, because here's what we learned. You know, I'm a Platonic scholar in grad school is one of my minors, but Plato said, whoever controls the narrative controls the world. And the world has got to get out of profound, despondent negativity right now, because it's destroying and demoralizing as far as we're concerned. And I think you and I have been friends long enough, and you wear this wondrous, radiant smile. I think we're on the same page.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page there. Definitely the world needs more positivity, more motivation, more inspiration. And that's why the world's blessed by you guys. I want to get into those 7 roadblocks to asking, because I know there's a few of them blocking me. So the first one we talk about in your book is unworthiness and insecurity, conditioning from our childhood of past experience that tells us we deserve better. Tell us, Crystal.
Right. Well, yeah, the unworthiness is constantly telling us that we don't deserve better. It's this subtle underlying feeling. And so the important thing about these roadblocks is to read about them and read the stories of people, because when we read one another's stories, we start to recognize a pattern. It becomes a metaphor for our own lives, that our brains think in patterns. So stories are powerful teachers. It helps us transcend those limitations. But yeah, the story we talk about is Bob Proctor. And Bob, I don't know if you know Bob Proctor.
Of course, giant,
premier, motivation guys in the world, so loved by all. But his self-esteem was so poor. He said, I believed I didn't deserve, my sense of unworthiness was so profound when I was, he was already in his adult years. He was a fireman. He made like $6,000 a year or something like that. Hung out in the bars every night with the same guys. Just life was going nowhere until, this mentor of his asked him a question. He's like, is this what you want for your life? And then he started asking, what do you want for your life? And he never asked himself what he wanted for his life anymore. He said, I didn't feel like I deserved anything. And I didn't feel like I was worthy of asking anyone for help. And so this one mentor helped him through that, and through this profoundly, amazing journey of asking questions and answering them and having these complete pivots in his life, he has created himself to be one of the stalwarts that all of us love to listen to in terms of, how to create your best life possible. So it's possible for anyone. But yeah, and then do you want to go forward? The next one?
Before we do that, let's just brag on Bob a minute. I've owned 2 great companies with Bob. He's one of our closest friends. We were at his 80th birthday, which feels like yesterday, but he talked to us yesterday morning. By the way, this is probably not fair, but he wrote a long letter and said, in a whole lifetime, you only have a few good commercial friends, and you're one of my great long-term friends. He said, tomorrow I turn 86. So we called him up. And by the way, he looks great. He feels great. He's doing better than ever. He's got 38 great grandkids. He's you know the term mensch, but he is a mensch's mensch. I mean, this guy's got it together. But what Crystal's saying is his front end unworthiness wasn't broken through until he challenged himself and then grew and grew and grew and started making $25,000 a month and $1 million a month. And then everyone came to him and said, how do you do it? And then he became a great teacher and practitioner of our industry.
Some people just can't break through. They just can't believe in their own greatness and that they're a miracle. No matter what you do, no matter what they hear, no matter how many times they hear it, what do you do for that person? How do you break through?
Right. Well, one of the things we talk about in the book, Eli, is how to prepare to be a good asker, because we do have to prepare. And the first part of preparation is belief. You have to be willing. And people said to me, but how do I believe?
Yeah.
Because it does start with belief. You have to believe, first of all, that your answers are out there somewhere for you if you keep asking. And you also have to believe that you deserve the answers. Okay. So what I tell people is to just suspend disbelief. Just, it's a leap of faith. Okay. But everything good in life requires faith. When we enter a marriage, it requires faith in one another that we're going to, move through this life together. Everything requires faith. When I get in the car to drive down the road, I have to have faith in my skills and in God's protection that I'm going to be fine. And so, life is a faith walk. So if we're not willing to believe it in ourselves this much, then we really need to say why, ask ourselves why. But the first preparation is belief. Secondly, it's action. We can't start asking these questions, and as our illuminations come to us and our solutions come to us, we then need to put those in action, okay? Because we can't just sit on the sofa with our blankie around us and, ask questions and never do anything about it. This is a physical experience that we're in life on this earth. We need to reach out to those people that when we ask a question, we think of something or someone or an idea, follow it up, make the phone call, take the action, do the next step. Investigate, learn, research, whatever it is. So action's the second one. And then the third one is visualization. God gave us this amazing mind with this amazing imagination. And it's where we get to create the architecture of our lives, literally. That's where it happens. And so if we're willing to use our imagination productively instead of destructively, by taking quiet time with ourselves and imagine what do I really want and what is my greatest outcome here? And Mark and I say, go to the nth degree of what you really want and suspend your left brain for a minute, because our left brain's always talking us out of things, giving us the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of why something won't work. Shut that down and just create a movie in your mind about exactly what you want in life. And then write that down and start to engineer it backwards. How did I get here? Who did I talk to? What am I doing each day? And so on and so forth. And when you do that, magically, you start to create this new plan for your life, this new architecture that fits what you really, really want.
So well said, boy. Let's get into the second roadblock to asking in your book. You write about naivety, unaware of what is possible. Tell us about that.
Well, I love this one because I tell this story about this wonderful Filipina woman who worked for us and took care of our children when we were young. And she was so delightful. When they were young. Yes, did I say when we were she would make all these wonderful dishes from her homeland. And one day she shows up with this fruit and cuts it up on a plate and hands it to me and says, it's this juicy, shiny orange fruit, and said, Crystal, try this. And I tasted it. And I was like, this is the best fruit I've ever tasted. What is this, Melda? And she goes, it's a mango. And I go, a mango? How come I've never had a mango before? Because I've considered myself to be pretty worldly. I traveled all over Europe and a lot of places in the world. And I was like, I can't believe I haven't had a mango. This is crazy. Where did you get this? And I was thinking she had imported it from the Philippines. She goes, at the grocery store. I was like, all this time I've been passing these by at the grocery store. What else am I passing by just because I don't know that it's there? I'm just naive. I'm not aware that it's there, right? What other people am I passing by every day that might have the answer that I'm looking for or an insight that I'm looking for? What opportunities am I passing by every day that, I'm not aware of, but might hold a key to something that's so important to me? And so it really woke me up to the idea that we need to be, we need to come out of our naivete and be endlessly curious, just like we were when we were children.
Love that. So the third one is a biggie, doubt. And we're not sure how to ask, you talk about. It wasn't encouraged in our childhoods. Can you actually use me as a guinea pig for this one?
Sure.
Tell you my story?
Yeah. Eli, tell us your biggest doubt.
Well, no, I'm going to tell you a story because I have a celebrity that lives in my building, right? And my elevator is really fast, so it only takes 13 seconds to get up to the floor. So there's not much of a conversation I can have there, right? But this celebrity can probably help me along my path a little bit, right? But I have this doubt in my head, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to ruin it forever? I'm going to see her in the lobby or in the elevator. She's going to want to ignore me. So I'm like, how do I say the right thing at the right time? Tell me.
Just ask, may I have your permission to pay you a compliment? Every celebrity wants a compliment. Here's the thing. Celebrities.
Great question, right?
By the way, here's the deal. A lot of people get intimidated by me, and I think, you and I have been friends a lot of years, so I don't think I'm intimidating at all, but a lot of people shake with me. It doesn't help me.
500 million books will do that.
Yeah, I know. And some of them have had their life changed seriously in positive ways. Thank God I'm in a positive zone. The point I'm making is that what we've discovered in most celebrities, because you pick a woman that you and I would look at and say is a 10, when we interview them, and we got a lot of them that are friends for all kinds of reasons, because we're on the board of a lot of charities, but the biggest right now is that most of them say they feel like a 7. And it sort of breaks my heart because the world's looking at them at a 10, but the elevator of their own self-esteem has not gone to the top because they haven't worked on themselves. And one of the things we teach in the book is you got to say to yourself 50 times a day, I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough. So when you're going up in the elevator and nobody's with you, just say it. And pretty soon you're looking at a mirror and you go, I'm enough. And then all of a sudden you're enough. Now you can talk to anybody about anything, anywhere, and you're as good as Barbara Walters.
I like that.
To add to that, Eli, I think it's important to compliment what she does. Okay, don't make it about physical appearance because that gets into all kinds of there's so much, again, creeper stuff going, like the Me Too movement. You don't want to get into that, but just like everybody just, loves a sincere compliment. So I don't know what she does, whether it's movies or journalism or whatever, but a sincere compliment about her work is really
good answer.
helpful, right?
Yeah, and say,
good one.
May I give you a compliment? I love Mark's question. May I give you a compliment? And then it's about the work.
Yeah, and then the second follow-up question is obvious. With your permission, can I tell you that I am an internationally renowned podcaster, and I'd love to do a podcast with you if you're open and want to source and serve a lot of people with positivity.
Oh my God, that's perfect. We'll save that one.
By the way, it's pretty irresistible. Here's my position, and I'm not trying to be harsh or anything, but we're going to California again in a few days, and a lot of our friends are in California, and we've been very blessed. Being the world's best-selling author, we've won more awards than anybody and gotten to meet all these people, but they are downtrodden. They are despondent right now. They have not been allowed to do a movie in 6 months. Yeah. And by the way, I just got done telling Crystal when we had lunch a few minutes ago, because we're in a different time zone than you, that I said, look, all these guys and ladies that we know are selling their big homes for one simple reason, which you said was too much overhead.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're relying on these huge, nobody thought the world would turn like this, right? And you feel like you can pretty much count on what's going on in your lives, and then it just got flipped upside down. So celebrities are having the same issue, so it might be interesting to say, I would love to have a conversation with you about, or, what do you think the blank world looks like, whether it's acting, singing, or journalism? What do you think that world's going to look like in the future? I'd love to, ask you those questions on my podcast.
Wow.
So questions.
I love that. I love that. Well, you say in your book, and this one's a real good one. So I want my listeners to listen to this real closely. You say, if you don't ask, the answer is already an automatic no.
Yes.
It is so good.
So,
and one of the guys that is a celebrity is Peter Guber. And Peter, we got in the book, and he's a great dear friend. We vacation with him and everything else. But so cool. Peter's had 50 Academy Awards. Nobody has more than Peter. Everything from Rocky to Batman to I Am the Greatest to, everything. Just he's wonderful, Rain Man. And then he owns a little sports team. We're sitting with him, and I said, what have you done lately? And he said, I bought a little sports team. I said, really? What one? And he said, Golden State Warriors. What? How much? $170 million. That's worth
$3. My God.
Well, if it ever opens up again, it was worth $3.8 billion when it was positive. But Peter's interviewing me, which is amazing. If you go on YouTube, you can see all my interviews. But Peter Guber interviews Mark Victor Hansen as well, a lot of other people for his book, Tell to Win. And Peter says, Mark, you are so dyslexic. Now, I'm not dyslexic at all. But he said, everybody that says no to you, you think it's on.
Isn't that great? I love that. Well, and back to what you were saying, I think the key here, and we talk about this in several ways in the book, Eli, is, so often when we're ready to ask for something, it's probably why we get so intimidated. We're so self-focused. We have a couple of questions, sections in the book that talk about this. In business, there's a book, story by Preston Weeks, talks about how they beat out the big behemoth when they sat down with this huge company. And instead of saying, here's what I have to sell you, here's what I want you to have, here's what we want you to do, they just said, in a perfect world, what are your needs? In a perfect world, if we met those needs, what would that look like? And, what is the most important pain point you have right now that if we fixed it, it would, really make a big difference. So if we go into these situations asking about them, just like we were talking about with this person you're going to ask on the elevator, you start asking the questions about them. And that is how you create the bond. That's how human beings create rapport, is by asking and answering, with each other. It's such a beautiful thing.
Krista, you just hit the jackpot. Just don't be so self-absorbed. I know I've been self-absorbed in my earlier days, and it didn't get me very far. In fact, if anything, it got me nervous. It got me trepidation. And usually the path did not end up too well, So when I focused on what I can do to serve, things always are better for me. So it's such an incredible point.
In a speaking business, that's why Zig Ziglar, first of all, he was a extroverted introvert, sort of like you are, or switched, whichever way that fits. But, you know, he trained himself to be that and became the world's top salesman and the world's top speaker while he was alive. He's unfortunately passed away. But he said, you know, you can have everything in life you want if you
help enough other people get what they want.
By
Oh my God,
Zig
Ziglar. And you know, it's interesting when I watched Zig Ziglar on stage, and I did watch him on stage. I was fortunate. When I saw him, my initial impression, he was born that way. That's how natural he looked.
Right.
No, he's actually shy and introverted and
hard to believe.
Yeah.
My God, that tells a lot, you know. So we'll get on to the next one, which is excuses.
Yeah.
You know, being too stubborn or proud to reach out to someone and be vulnerable. Tell us about that.
Okay, so there's a story about my big brother who I absolutely loved and modeled as a little kid, but he's 11 years older than I was. And he came back he retired a little early because he did really well, is coming back from panning gold with his best friend and says, well, I'll stay a few days with you in beautiful Scottsdale at your house. And he's here and we have a wonderful time. But after a couple of days, he has to go back home, and I drive him to the airport. I get up at 5, get him to the airport plenty early. Now, understand, I've traveled 250,000 miles a year for 44 years, so airport protocol is a non-issue for me. And it didn't dawn on me. His wife had predeceased him, who he adored, Priscilla, but she dragged him through the airport, and I didn't know that. So I said, big brother, are you, here's your ticket. You got your tickets. You know how to get to a gate. And oh, yeah, I got it. He would never, he had too much self-esteem, and he would too damn stubborn to tell. I would have gladly parked the car, walked his little butt in, walked him all the way to the gate, because he's not handicapped. He's very bright, but he didn't ever make it to the gate. Well, late that night, I call up to his house, and his daughter answers, Jody. And I said, Jody, can I talk to your dad? And said, didn't you know? I said, I don't think I like what you're telling me. What, Jody? He said, he won't be home for another 12 hours. I said, what? I got him to the airport plenty of times. Said he couldn't find the gate. Oops. And he sort of blames you. And I said, wait a second. At our airport, Phoenix International, it's a giant airport. Everybody wears purple coats. All you got to do is walk up to a guy or lady with a purple coat on, ask them anything. They'll tell you where the bathroom is, how to get to gates in Terminal C or whatever. She said, Dad would never do that. Didn't you know? Priscilla dragged him through the airports. He never in his whole life knew how to get through an airport. I said, man, I wish you're my great niece. Why couldn't you tell me that? I would have gladly walked your dad all the way to the gate. But all that, his whole life was excuses. He was profoundly successful in what he did, but because he had a photographic memory, and he was, brilliant, but he wasn't willing to ask. It just is, it's to the two of us, and I hope to you, it's heartbreaking that there are a lot of people that go through at a sub level of what they could achieve if they just got rid of the excuse. Say, look, there's no more excuses. I'm going to ask.
Simple ask, right? Do men tend not to ask as much as women? You find that?
I think it's both. Sometimes women are afraid, in like a boardroom or something. Sometimes it's the woman that won't speak up and ask the questions because, that's why there have been a lot of studies done about that, why girls do well in all girls schools. I put my girls in an all girls Catholic high school because when boys are around, they'll hold back and not ask the question as fast. But yeah, men, it's more about the stubborn pride. And so that fit Bailey, Mark's brother. He just is like, I don't need any help. You know these people, right? Your audience knows these people.
Oh, yeah.
The stubborn pride. I don't need help. No thanks. I don't need anything. Yet they'll not accept help. They'll never ask, and then they'll suffer, and then they'll have a terrible outcome, and again and again and again, and they just are so stubborn they can't get over it. And unfortunately, Bailey, in his case, by the time he got home, he had a touch of pneumonia. Because he had caught a little cold in Alaska, and just that whole day in the airport and the stress turned it into pneumonia. And it just, so many situations in his life were like that, where he just was too stubborn to ask.
And if you called me, I would have gone and picked him up. I would have got him on the right plane. I would have switched planes for him. I could have done 7 different things we write in the book. But, you've got to get over excuse-itis.
Stubbornness, yeah.
Absolutely. So number 5 in the 7 roadblocks to asking, I think is a real big one. And I got to believe that over 90% of people have struggled with this, if not every human being who's ever lived. And that's fear, the underlying feeling that we'll lose something by asking. So tell us a little bit about the fear factor here.
Right. The fear factor is so huge with asking. And I think it comes down to this, a human's need for love, I think. So we feel like if we ask and we're rejected, we're losing love or we're losing approval. And that is not true. You know, again, we become so self-focused that we always think things are about us. And normally they have nothing to do with us. If someone tells you no, it really has nothing to do with you or what you're offering or what you're suggesting. It's just the place they are at this particular moment. It doesn't work for them. It's not, and we personalize those things and we're devastated. So we hold back. We get some people just terrified to ask. And so we need to remember that it's not personal. And, you know, you have so much to gain by getting over that fear and asking. There's a great story in the book by a woman named 𝐿𝐴 who was, she came out of college wanting to go into the nonprofit space. She knew that's what she wanted. So she decided to put together this summer camp for children. And it was pretty expensive for disadvantaged children because, you know, their parents can't afford it and they've got, they're home all summer, what to do with them. So she put together this fabulous camp. It was kind of expensive. It was $5,000 per child, but she was able to get an appointment with the richest woman in her town. And this woman controlled a large family trust. But the day she showed up at the woman's office, she was so scared to ask her for support to sponsor a camper that she said, I was visibly shaking. My body was trembling so much I couldn't hide it. So I just said, I'm really scared. I am so sorry. And the woman was very kind. She said, you know, don't worry. So let's sit down together and tell me what you have here. So she said, I put together this amazing camp, that great benefits that for the children, and it's really going to help. And she said, okay, it sounds amazing. How much are you asking for? And again, she got so scared. She stuttered. She goes, it's $5,000. That's how much it costs to put a child through. And she said, and the woman answered her, okay, but how many children are coming? How many children do you want to sponsor? And she said, there are like 285. And the woman said, okay, I want to sponsor all of them. So she said, how much will that be? And Lynn was so shocked, just jaw dropped, shocked. She said, do you have a calculator? I have no idea. She came in there scared to ask for $5,000 for one camper. And this woman blew her away in granting her request, so over granting her request. So think about it, how irrational that fear is, right? Because we don't know who that next person's going to be, who's going to over answer our request, over grant the wish, be totally on board. And sometimes, you know, Lynn was scared, but sometimes we just literally have to step on our fear with courage and crush it and keep asking.
I love that. Yeah, I remember the first time I went up on a radio show and I was, you know, kind of trembling. It was a long time back because I'm saying, I know, 50,000 people could be listening to me. And then it reminded me of a book that I had read, and someone actually I had at my seminar center, Dr. Susan Jeffers, and she wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it was a great title, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
I love that.
Right? That's what it's about. So let's get to number 6, pattern paralysis, a blind spot that pattern carriers cannot see.
Right. I mean, I know we all know these people, but they get so stuck in their pattern and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's not working. And they're sabotaging their happiness, their success, their relationships, basically everything, but they refuse to look at the pattern. And looking at the pattern means asking, what is working in my life? Is what I'm doing working? Is what I'm doing in my relationship working? Okay, what are the results I'm getting? You know, when you start down that path of asking questions, you will learn so much about yourself. And that's really the only way to break out of pattern paralysis.
That's why Socrates said, know thyself. And, you know, then the last line he said was, the unexamined life is not worth living. And what we're saying is we don't know another way to examine life better than, I'm glad that you're hitting on asking. Let me do that. I've never said this in any podcast, and we've probably done 60 or 70 podcasts so far. I didn't know about podcasting before 4 or 5 months ago. But my position is, you know how, forgive me if I'm exposing you to your whole audience, but you said that all of a sudden this word ask keeps coming into your head.
Yes.
I've seen it back to pattern, positive pattern though. Is that we're being told by a lot of people that it's coming into their head. Do you Eli, I'm asking this innocently, not as a marketing test.
No, please.
Is it do you think God's just sort of saying, hey, everybody, wake up, shake it, because you got to ask, because you got to pivot, you got to go in a new direction, you got to reinvent, you got something great in front of you, because you really have a great destiny if you just start asking yourself the right question, so you ascend and transform to the best you possible.
I love that. I absolutely believe that I need to ask more questions. So if I need to ask more questions, so does everybody else. And I think that in asking, that's where the gold is, you know. Otherwise, you're depending on your own mind, and you're going to repeat the same patterns you've had for decades, right? The status quo. You even talk about the status quo in your book.
Yep, exactly.
What happens is that what we discovered is the minute you ask a question, you get illumination. And you know, back when I was in grad school with Bucky Fuller, who's Albert Einstein's best student, who's a futurist, a thinker, a genius, 2,000 inventions, all that stuff, 40 books. When I was traveling with Bucky for 7 years, Dr. Fuller, he was affectionately called himself Bucky, is it when Bucky used to teach me, anytime you ask a question, you could ask, what's that tree? And you don't know why, but 3 days later, somebody comes and say, isn't that the most beautiful walnut tree that you've ever seen? And you go, wow. But the same is true if you ask yourself, how do I become a millionaire? How do I become healthy? How do we get out of this malaise? How do we get over the fear? How do we start back to what I said a second ago to you? How do we start learning to ask? There must be a profound science and talent and refinement to it. And we think we've got it. And boy, the results of people like you are so complimentary to us, saying, you know, just our beginning story got you involved in it, and you can hardly wait to finish the whole book to do it, and then you'll probably want to read it again and share it to other friends who are despondent, disconsolate, upset. And that's what's happening. Everybody's starting to share the book, and it's starting to grow like wildfire in the country.
Right. And just to hitchhike on what Mark said, when we did the research for this book, what we found was that when you ask yourself, science shows this, the studies show this, when you ask yourself a question, it literally lights up a different part of your brain. It's the part of your brain that does critical thinking. So you literally are, by asking, are causing your brain to go to work for you in a better, bigger way. And the more questions you ask, the more you get access to that resource that's right here.
Wow, this is great stuff. You guys are amazing. So we're on to the last one, number 7 itself, disconnection, giving up on the real desires of the heart. Tell us about that.
Right. And for me, Eli, this is probably the saddest one of all for me, honestly, when I see people do this, because it's really about, you know, giving up on yourself, giving up on those desires that God seeded inside of you, because we all have that. We all come to this earth with something to do, with a purpose to be had and expressed. And so it's what you see when you just see apathy, you know, and just giving up. And so it just, we become so out of touch that we become numb. And so it's important to just come back to yourself and realize those dreams are still there. But you just need to be brave enough and bold enough to start asking those questions, because you're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. And I don't mean, you know, everyone's going to be a king or a rock star. We have a purpose that is all about connecting to one another, learning, growing, evolving, doing our part in this just mesh of humanity, you know. And that's why on the ask God part, we say ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. One of my favorite questions every day is to myself is, God, you know, what is the greatest expression for which you made me, right? What is how do I fit into this kingdom purpose, this universe? You show me what that is.
You know, you two guys are like the cutest couple. I mean, you guys have so much smarts in you. I just absolutely, I can't find a cuter couple on the planet. And I got to tell you, to summarize, to summarize the Hansens' extraordinary book, Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. In their words, ask for things that are beyond you, bigger than you, bigger than anyone you know, bigger than anything you have accomplished so far. My listeners, you were born to be a winner. You were born to be a champion. Don't waste one more precious minute of your life. Go out and buy 10 or 20 copies of Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny, and give them as gifts, because I'm going to do that today. I'm going to buy 20 copies of your books, and I'm going to give them out as gifts. Those are great presents. You never know whose life you will turn around. And I have a feeling that many lives will be turned around because my life's being turned around right this moment. Mark and Crystal, you are American treasures. I am beyond blessed to have you on the Motivation Show. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
We want to give everybody one other gift, Eli, because of our friendship forever. And we want everybody to go to askthebookclub.com and join. It's free. And once a month, you get to ask anything you want of Crystal and Mark. And we're going to have askers literally from around the world. And you'll get to listen in on other askers. And it'll illuminate you. It'll expand you. It'll give you solutions. And it's going to be one of the more wonderful things. All because this little book will be poured into your soul. Is going to reveal who you really are in the universe and what you can do that's going to be, like Crystal said, profound as you discover and actualize your destiny.
And of course, it's available on Amazon, like everything. So get the book and then join us for the book club. It's free. We just want to keep the discussion going.
I'll be doing that today. I'll be joining that club.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We love our listeners, and we believe you have greatness within you. If you like The Motivation Show, we appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing us. Check out 𝐂𝐫𝐼marcussuccess.com to hear more inspiring shows and to read our motivational blog. That's 𝐂𝐫𝐼marcussuccess.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.